Imagine a hiking trail that doesn't have a start. It doesn't really have an end. What would that look like? Most people listening to this podcast will be familiar with the super long trails like the Pacific Crest Trail or the Appalachian Trail or the Continental Divide Trail. All of these have trailheads, a start and an end, whether you're going northbound or southbound. Some people section hike. The American Perimeter Trail is a concept that was conceived by Rue McKenrick, a professional long-distance backpacker from the United States. Essentially, it's a 12 to 13,000 mile trail that circumnavigates the United States of America. It joins up with parts of some of the existing long trails, such as the PCT, the AT, the North Country Trail, and parts of the Pacific Northwest Trail. But really, this is a brand new trail. There's parts of the country, and I mean thousands of miles of this country, that have not been covered by a trail. So Rue threw a bag on his back, left his house in Bend, Oregon, and attempted to circumnavigate the United States of America and develop the American Perimeter Trail. Sadly, in 2020, not very far from the end, I think he hiked about 9,000 miles. Well, he did have about 3,000 or 4,000 miles left to go, but in the grand scheme of things, he hiked 9,000 miles. He unfortunately got sick, and he had to go back home and stay off his feet for a while. Doctor's orders. I caught up with Rue while he was on the mend in Bend. We talked about his hiking career and why he felt that the United States needed a giant loop trail. But this isn't just a trail. This is much more. This is also an effort to create a conservation corridor that circles the entire country. I really enjoyed my chat with Rue. He has quite a story to tell. And if anyone is going to develop a trail to this magnitude, I certainly will be electing Rue McKenrick for a job like this. So without any further ado, here's my interview with Rue McKenrick. So Rue McKenrick, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
You got it.
Rue McKenrick, thank you so much for joining me. You've got a pretty impressive repertoire of hiking trails across the United States, the PCT, the AT, the CDD, the Triple Crown, let's call it what it is, along with the Long Trail and the GMT. I'm sure there's plenty more that we can talk about. But you're on a mission at the moment, or you have been for the past few years, to create a new trail. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Sure. I'll just speak from the concept of the trail because in large part, you'll find some of this trail on the ground. And then also in large part, you will find areas where there is no existing footbed. And I can speak more to my process, but essentially, I came up with a concept or idea to create what I call the American Perimeter Trail. It's a trail that I guess would roughly be between 12 and 13,000 miles. I'm sorry, I didn't do the kilometer.
That's okay.
Yeah, okay.
1.6. Let's multiply by 1.6 and then we got it.
Oh, great. And so, and it would basically be a conservation corridor that would follow the contiguous United States or the lower 48. And it follows the perimeter of the country. And I refer to it as a conservation corridor simply because the American Perimeter Trail Conference is in fact a conservation organization rather than would only be seen as a trail organization. So part of the mission there is conservation through recreation. We're not the first ones to use this model. Many other trail organizations, as we see them on their face, they look like a trail organization, but with some more knowledge of some of these organizations, you'll find that they may even just be a political organization that is a trail organization on the front, or they're in fact a conservation organization that is using trail or access as a way of conservation.
Okay, yeah. So I've noticed that with the Continental Divide Trail, that they would be a conservation organization as well as just a trail organization. So what does that
Correct.
mean to the general public?
So what that means to the general public is, I haven't done a lot of messaging around this. I mean, I am hiking the trail. I hope to finish here in a couple months, and I never came to the approach here, as far as the public, as looking at it as a through hike, or in other words, hiking the entire trail. That wasn't really what was on my mind. I know in kind of like social media circles, that's often how people speak of it. But I just see it as a conservation area that has access to recreation that can be used by day hikers or people who want to go for a weekend. I myself am a professional long distance backpacker, but my expectation is not that everybody who wants to go on this trail is a professional long distance backpacker. My expectation is this is a wild area where people can go and enjoy. And if you want to spend a lot of time out there, like a year and a half or 2 years or 3 years, you can do that.
Just keep going around and around.
Around and around. Yeah, I should say it's a loop. So there's not a terminus per se. However, I live in Bend, Oregon, and that's where I began my hike from, and that's where I will end. So to me, that's kind of the beginning and end, but truly it doesn't have any.
So where you said that this starts in your hometown, does this follows parts of the PCT existing trails that are there, the PCT, the AT, and parts of the North Country Trail, if I'm correct?
Yeah, and to clarify that point a little bit, so during my actual hike, I used parts of the Pacific Crest Trail. There is a question there as to whether or not the PCT will be a shared corridor with the American Perimeter Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail. That's to be answered, because I simply did not use the PCT the whole time on my hike, and I was not tied down to it in any way. If there's other trails or other routes that I could hike, I use them. And just know, on a lot of these long trails, I'm already a through hiker, or I have through hiker like plus. In other words, I've hiked the whole trail and then maybe done it once again or parts of it, whatever. So as far as informing the long-term project, me going and hiking a lot of trails that I've already hiked is not informative. So during this trek, I tried to use trails that I hadn't been on before. And in fact, I didn't use the Appalachian Trail. I used my own route. And I know this is a big misunderstanding. I actually used my own route through the Appalachians instead of the Appalachian Trail. I didn't know when I started if I would use the Appalachian Trail or not. Again, I have probably 4,000 some miles on that trail, and it's only 2,000 miles long. So I had a lot of knowledge around it. So going forth, it made sense for me to use a different route that would be more informative with the project going forward, and considering that maybe these other much lesser used trails, like for backpacking, really not used much at all, could be an option for the APT. Also, when I approached the Appalachians, a global pandemic happened, as you may remember. But
it's not a distant memory by any means.
Yeah, it's not in the past. So, but when I got to the Appalachians, the Appalachian Trail was closed at that time for all intensive purposes. In order to continue my trek in a responsible and ethical way that I saw fit, was using other routes where I wouldn't see any backpackers, and I didn't. So yeah, just back to your question, pieces of the Appalachian Trail or Pacific Crest Trail or Continental Divide Trail, because I was on the Divide as well
Hmm.
for a bit, and the North Country Trail. All it's just I have a gratitude for having that much to trek
Hmm.
here, and the APT uses some of the existing trails, and then in other places it's simply cross country. Like for instance, in Arizona, New Mexico,
Yeah.
there was a lot of cross country in the desert, which just means it was public land. So you can trek through there, you can camp through there for free. You don't need permits, but you have to be able to route find. Um, and compass, but there wasn't an actual footbed that I was trekking on. There's a place where the APT conference wants to put a physical footbed.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I've listened to other interviews that you've done as well about some of the bits of land that you've gone through, particularly in Texas, where I think it was mentioned that only 4.2% of the state is actual public land. Am I right in saying
Oh,
that?
I, I would have loved if it was even 4. It would have been helpful, but it's more
Wow.
like 1.2, I think.
Wow.
Um, and so, obviously I got a lot of questions about how was that even possible for you to do that. I mean,
Mhm.
people walk and run across Texas. And we have a joke here in the States that I hear all the time. And it's this joke about driving through Texas because it takes so long. And so, when anything's going to take a long time, someone might say, oh, it's just like driving through Texas. But walking through Texas takes a considerably longer amount of time. Um, and if you want to walk through Texas or run through Texas or bike through Texas, you can do that. The issue was I was specifically trying to find wild areas, and also I camped out every night. So I was looking for public lands to camp on, and that was nearly impossible in some areas. So going forward, I have a lot of ideas around Texas and how we can make that work. Um, and that's going to be a very difficult part of of this project going forward, is going to be that those areas that don't have public land. So
Okay. And
mhm.
it's a slightly off topic, but it kind of relates to it. Is around international hiking, and the reason for this is because it rules around use of private land is a little bit different. Like in the UK, they've got the right to roam, and they have partnerships with landowners and farm owners where you can use these public footpaths um, through their land. Uh, well, first part, have you hiked internationally? Have you ever gone to Europe or Australia or anywhere else to hike the trails? And two, would you try to see if you could adopt rules and regulations like they have there into somewhere like Texas, where it's going to be up and down through the entire state? Whereas if you have these agreements, you might be able to beeline it through the entire state.
Yeah, so the way that, and I have spent a good amount of time in Western Europe. I'd spent a couple summers there, uh, and some of the differences. There's so many similarities, and then there's some things that are generally different. I mean, the similarities are um, just that both of these places have beautiful areas, natural areas that still exist in which we can trek, because not everywhere in the world has that. Um, but some of the differences are, I think, uh, why there's been attraction to some of the American backpacking in the last couple years. I think some of that attraction is it's so lightly regulated. So, in other words, there's large tracts of land here where they have guidelines, but they're very simple. They're like camp 1,000 miles away from, or sorry, camp like 1,000 feet I don't know, that would be like maybe 35 meters or so from water and from a road, and don't stay more than whatever it is for that national forest, like 8 days.
Yeah.
Well, if you're backpacking, that's no issue because you're going to be using leave no trace practices, and you're not going to be held up in an area for too long. So you don't actually need a permit or let anyone know or get permission, and you can trek those areas. So, but not all these areas are developed as far as trail systems. So that's part of the work that I'm doing. So you often find not as many permits, not having to stay in designated campsites because, again, it's just not permitted. There may not be any designated campsites. It's just understood that you should be using leave no trace practices. So often on the long trails here where you see areas denoted as campsites, they're not official campsites. It's just saying there's a flat spot there that we noticed that some other people camped at, you know. But as far as using private land, the other long trails in this country have done that, and they typically do that with easement agreements with private landowners. So, for instance, you maintain your land, but you have an agreement that you're not going to develop it and that you're going to permit people to trek through this space. And sometimes they may have, like the landowner may stipulate, okay, they can walk through the land, but they can't camp here. So you'd have to camp on either side of the boundary, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, as far as us going forward, the best bet in the United States is to try to use the existing public land. When you come into private land, some areas are just almost impossible because it's too many working pieces. In other words, what happens when you have a small piece of land you want to go through, but you have 1,000 landowners in that space?
Mm-hmm.
What you do find is that there are existing two paths or timber roads or even railroads where the railroad has been pulled up that can be put into the public sector, and then those areas can be used for trails. But I mean, this is if there's an expectation that this trail will be complete when I complete it, that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
Every long trail takes decades, and they're constantly changing and evolving. If you look at the Appalachian Trail from 20 years ago, it's going to look different than it does today.
I
And
was
this is
going
the
to,
same.
yeah, I was going
Yeah,
to
this is the
ask you
same
that.
for every trail.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so. I doubt many people have the hiking or walking experience that I've had exactly, because some of the areas I have alternates that I would use,
Mm.
as opposed to what I actually walked. Securing that land is just so important, and the way that I find people are enthusiastic about this is through recreation and through friendships and relationships with communities or trail groups.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And okay, let's get to know you a little bit better. So,
Okay.
what was your first long hike that you did?
Yeah. So just know that the definition of long hike for me, um, I typically think of long as like anything that takes a couple days.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as, you know, as far as like a truly longer distance of like maybe what we're speaking about, it would have been the through hike of the Appalachian Trail.
Okay.
And that was 18 years ago,
Okay.
when I through hiked that. So I went northbound, and that's 2,100 miles. And so I went, yeah, I took, 5 to 6 months and backpacked that. Yeah.
And was there what was it that drew you to the AT? Was the PCT as popular back then, or was there more infrastructure around the AT, or was it just that was the trail? It was just it had to be that one.
Yeah, this is my perspective. I grew up on the Appalachian Trail. I I currently live on the Pacific Crest Trail. So if you look at a trail map of the United States, you'll see that the Appalachian Trail is on the East Coast, and then the Pacific Crest Trail is thousands of miles away on the West Coast. So I grew up on the Appalachian Trail, but I live on the Pacific Crest Trail now. So growing up, and when I say growing up, like on the Appalachian Trail, I mean right there, to the point where at some point in time, my parents moved to like a mountain house, and you could walk through the back of their property and you would hit the Appalachian Trail.
Wow.
So for me, it was something that was very much in heart. That was my like personal journey with it. Was I knew backpacking, it was going to be the Appalachian Trail because that was my homeland. The Appalachians is my homeland. Now, as far as popularity goes, that would have had, at that point in time, it definitely would have had an impact on whether or not someone would hike the AT or the PCT, because the PCT, even 16 years ago when I hiked it, had, I don't even know what the percentage is. I hate to throw a percentage at you, but I'm guessing it was somewhere in the 5 to 10% range of what it is now.
Oh, sorry.
Not completion, starting.
Yes.
Starting a long distance through hike.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know what the completion numbers are there from that year to, the current year. But that surely would have been different then. I don't find that now. I find that the Pacific Crest Trail has largely gained a tremendous amount of popularity very quickly in just the last couple years. Yeah.
And I guess, social media will be a major part of that. But what was the popularity growing before Instagram was a thing or Facebook was a thing?
So I just so you know, I completed the Triple Crown before we had smartphones.
Wow.
So we didn't have we didn't use technology. If you could carry a phone if you wanted to, but it wouldn't work anywhere. And all it did was place phone calls. Like it didn't take pictures or.
Yeah.
Anyways, you understand. So
you could play a game of I don't know, Snake or something on your phone on your Nokia.
I'm not even sure if we had Snake, but oh man. So just know that when I hiked the Triple Crown, there just wasn't any. Well, social media wasn't a thing. It didn't exist or existed in some other form. So I would say really from looking at the numbers, it looks like there's two things that happened. The Appalachian Trail was the publication of Bill Bryson's Walk in the Woods, and you can see a jump on the numbers of attempting through hikers. So I'm only talking about long distance at this point. So because millions of people use that trail every year, but only so many attempt the long distance or a long section. So, and then I guess that's what you see there. And then they have on the PCT what they call the wild effect. And that is basically Cheryl Stray releasing her memoir, and then the subsequent movie that came from that, starring Reese Witherspoon. So the numbers and interest in that, when I hiked the Triple Crown, friend, I remember meeting two people, I think, from other countries. I think I met two people during that entire, thousands and thousands of miles of hiking. When I began on this trek on the American Primitive Trail on the PCT, I rarely saw Americans. It was typically more folks from Europe. Wow. And I really enjoyed that. Who wouldn't? I just think that's amazing part of traveling experiences to get to meet people from all over. And so things have changed in that way in which things that people have decided to do. I would say probably 20 years ago, even backpackers hadn't really heard of the Pacific Crest Trail
Hmm.
very much. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I know we're a few thousand miles away here over in Europe, in Ireland, but I didn't hear about the PCT until when I really got into hiking, long distance hiking. It still was another 6 months or so until I actually knew what the PCT was. I've heard of the PCT, or heard of it wasn't called the PCT, it was the Pacific Crest Trail. I heard that,
Mm-hmm.
but even at that, I just thought it was a maybe 100 mile hike in
Oh, sure.
California. It's like,
Sure.
little did I know. Um,
Yeah.
you mentioned that you're meeting a lot more people on the APT, and when you do meet people, um, and obviously ultimately eventually you're going to reveal that you're hiking around the entire country. What's their reaction?
Well, first of all, I pretty much never reveal that.
Oh,
Um, when I left to go on the APT, many of my good friends didn't know I was a triple crowner. Um, I've just been very private uh, until I had a reason, not a reason, until I felt compelled or inspired to have that voice,
hmm,
that experience, and that expression be public, because I'm the executive director of the American Perimeter Trail Conference and the creator of this. So a lot of what I disclose is fully based on my personal mission of what I want to spend my energy and time with. But yeah, no, typically I don't say anything to anyone. On the APT, I was in what I call non-trail communities for most of it. And so those people wouldn't have had any experience with backpacking. They wouldn't have understood anything besides me maybe just being like a drifter
mm,
or vagrant or something like that. I mean, um, I was stopped by the police over 20 times during this trek, or I have been so far. So it's not, when you're on the long trails, established long trails, you don't have any of that.
mhm.
Everyone understands you're a backpacker, you're resupplying. But when you're outside of these areas, especially with the tension that's existed in the world at this point, um, it's someone may be asking what you're doing. Especially a lot of the travel was around the Mexico United States border,
Mhm.
where there's a lot of activity, and so often I got stopped there. So I want to answer your question, but I typically don't explain it to people, and normally, like, because some of the time I would explain it and they don't believe me, or it's not making sense, like why someone would do that or what they're
Mm.
doing. So I typically just avoid it. Um, I don't know what that says about me. I mean, maybe I have some growth to do there. I mean, even on when I'm on long trails, if I'm on the PCT or the AT or something, I have backpackers um, tell me stuff about, like um like they're coaching me all the time because they like assume that it's my first night out or something like that.
Okay.
um so they don't know any different, and I don't tell them. When
Mm.
I'm with people, it honestly, it frustrates other people when I'm with them, because they want me to uh like, I don't know, get in a power dynamic with someone that I don't have any interest in, of
Mm.
being like, oh, don't tell me about the PCT, I'm a through hiker, and
Yeah.
I just don't bother. So the reaction, I really, and then during the pandemic, so for much of this trail, when I've been trekking, I haven't had any human contact besides a postmaster once a week, where I get my resupply at a post office. So it's not like I was mixing it up with the public.
Mhm.
I think people often, uh, I don't know, there may be some kind of sense that, yeah, I'm like going around the country and everyone is like starstruck by me or something like that, but they don't know who I am, and I don't offer that information. So, um, but that's not necessarily a healthy process. And I didn't have a social media presence before I left to go on this trip. And I'm so grateful for it now because it's allowed me to do the work
Hmm.
that I'm doing. It's just been a very helpful tool in this process to get things moving a lot faster than we could before. But yeah, I haven't been around. I wasn't on backpackers. I wasn't around backpackers
Hmm.
this whole trip. So it wasn't like I was even meeting people on trail where they asked like, "What are you doing?" I hiked and camped with a backpacker at the very beginning of the trip. Not the very beginning, but shortly therein. And I hiked with them for a little while, and then I wasn't with anyone for the next 13 months. So,
Wow.
um, and I wasn't seeing anyone on trail for weeks at a time. So I don't know. That's a long-winded explanation.
No, it's a really interesting answer because, funnily enough, we've been talking, and I think it's been making its way into social media discourse around the characters you meet when you're out hiking on long distance trails, and it's probably a little bit more prevalent over in the US, but we certainly do see it in Europe a bit about the different types of people you meet. So you have the people that you're talking about, that are, oh, how many miles did you hike today, or is this your first through hike, or the gear nerds, the historian, all these different things. So you have um the quiet one, if you
Well,
want it, the monk.
well, yeah. Well, it's just if you run into me on the trail, don't be offended. I'm not lying to you, but if you ask me where I'm coming from,
Mm,
I will tell you where I camped the night before.
yeah,
That's pretty much as far as I'm going to go. People usually aren't satisfied with that and they push me further, and then I usually will disclose something.
hmm,
It's new to me being more public about this. I'm Don't misunderstand. I have gratitude for this because I don't care about a popularity contest, but I want to build this trail.
yeah.
Um, I want to. I really do. And what we're finding through the process is that people um, want to hear about my experience.
Yeah.
I'm not very interested in it because I just spent the last 14 months or so by myself talking to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
like like when reporters will come and meet me or something, I always want to speak to them and ask them about their families, and they're like, no, that's not how this works, Rue. We're here to speak about you. And I'm like, but I'm so tired of talking about me. Yeah. So
I,
I'm definitely coming and being more public, and everything that I do, I just really believe in this project and what we're building here, what we're creating.
um, actually, one of the things that I noticed on your blog, was one of the earlier posts, that you like to create characters and come up with stories. Is it still something that you do, or do you remember any of the characters that you came up with?
Well, I wasn't entirely aware of this. I've always written stories. I've always written music.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but I wasn't really aware of the character thing because I spent a lot of my life alone, and it's something that I was doing and not realizing that I was doing, because
Okay.
I don't realize I'm doing it until I'm around people. So like for instance, one time I had this opportunity to work with a very tight team of people, and we traveled a lot together. And I found out, like, when we were traveling, like in a vehicle or whatever we were doing, that I would often like be doing impressions of people we had just met at meetings or something, like, just, I don't know, just trying to have some fun before I die. And so I realized it then, and then I thought I had stopped doing that. But during this trek, I started realizing that I do it more. And I made the mistake of recording a couple of them because I was bored, and sent them to one of the board members who, was in you know, I was in contact with her a lot because of the trek, because she helps me with all the coordination of that. And so I would send her these characters, and I didn't expect them really to come out in the world anywhere, but then she started posting them. So, um, but it's like, typically it's just people walking around in the woods. They have different dialects. That was the other thing that each time I would walk through another dialect in the United States, I would try to get it down before I left that area, because sometimes they were happening, like, it would almost just be like people on other sides of the town,
Mm.
almost like this side of the town talks this way or speaks this way, and the other side. So yeah, there was like, the southern United States has got so many beautiful, wonderful dialects. And so that was some of the time where I would spend, like, uh, like, there was a gentleman who was a character that he goes up and he manages the sticks in the forest. And so he's got like a real deep drawling voice when he talks. And he just goes up in the woods and finds some sticks. And then I like to just do what I can for the environment. So, I make some sticks up here. And he just kind of talks about his time in the woods. There's a couple different guys like that. I mean, there's just things that come to me because I told you I was tired of speaking with myself. So sometimes I would have conversations with other people that I devised.
Ah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
good. Like, and you can have so much fun with that as well. And, using different dialects that you just learned to, with the character, the mannerisms and maybe the personalities of some of the people that you met throughout the trip. It's a really fun way of keeping yourself entertained when you have no one else around.
Yeah, it's fun. And I don't think any of it was real very controversial what I've done, but yeah, sometimes people don't understand you're in character.
Hmm.
So you could say, and this is not my normal life. Like, there's people in my normal life that aren't going to quite know what we're speaking about. They know of it, but I usually do it by myself. And so yeah, I might make some comments in character that are not me,
Yeah,
and people will be like, how could you feel that way? And I'm like, oh, but I don't. That was a joke.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
I highly recommend it.
just putting yourself in the character, and you can say whatever you want.
You can say whatever you want,
um,
especially when you're in the woods alone. You can
yeah,
absolutely say whatever you like.
it's just you and the squirrels. Um, so, what drove you to embark on the project, on the APT?
Yeah.
And you've got, as I said, you've got a really impressive CV of all the through hikes that you've done. Um, what was there a sense of discovery that you wanted to see these places, or sorry, I'll let you answer the question rather than
Yeah.
putting words in your mouth.
Sure. So yeah, let me start here. I never had any intention of ever through hiking the Triple Crown. I hear that often now, more so than I remember in the past. That's just my experience. I don't know, but I see, or I don't see, people tell me about, like, a lot of people uh, promote hiking the Triple Crown and promote it online that haven't really ever backpacked before. And I don't remember that being like a phenomenon back then. Like, I'm going to hike the Triple Crown. I think, most of the people I know from that time period, they hiked a trail, had an experience that they wanted to learn more about. And so then they hiked another trail. And then it's like, shoot, you live in America. We have the Triple Crown. It kind of, if you hike one of the long trails and it's an experience that you're looking to have again, chances are um, one of the three, the top, not the top three, but the three that are the Triple Crown,
Mm-hmm.
more than likely you'll probably go hike another one and maybe eventually decide to do the third one. but it's not necessarily a process of like, I'm setting out to hike the Triple Crown.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know I was going to hike the Triple Crown until I was on the third leg. Like I hadn't planned out. I remember someone saying to me on my second leg of the Triple Crown, "Oh my God, you'll go hike the third, and then you'll be a Triple Crowner and all this." And I said, "Nah, I don't think so. I think I have some other backpacking I want to do." But then it ended up happening anyways down the road. So as far as like the inspiration for me has always been what I just refer to as the people and the places and the open spaces. And my travel is not about the destination, and it's not that it isn't ever about the destination. Of course it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I look at a map in the day and I see that there's a place I want to camp that night, I'm going to try to make sure that I get there. You know, that's a deadline in itself. And if I decide I'm going to hike to this state or mountain range, yeah, I put a goal out there, but that doesn't mean that that's the whole intent. My intent at this point is mainly just a lifestyle. So I don't even really see, like this last trek, I might call it a trek, but I usually don't call it a trip because it wasn't a trip from my normal life, really. It was just life. Like I was just doing this every day. It was my work, it is my passion. It's my friend. So it's just more of a lifestyle at this point. But there's this question, like nature versus nurture, you know, that Margaret Mead posed. And I don't know. I grew up near the Appalachian Trail, but I have 4 brothers. None of them backpack. They grew up, you know, where I did the same. They do things that I don't have interest in. So I don't know where this comes, but at some point there was a choice to have an experience.
Mm-hmm.
It was an experience I wanted to see further, learn more about, and grow through. I don't know how many miles I've hiked because I don't count them. I'm not saying you shouldn't, because it's very rewarding and it's
Mm-hmm.
fun. You know, it's great. It's fun. It's an accomplishment. So it's not that I wouldn't do that. I just haven't done that as much because it's just more of the lifestyle. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you, I know you just said that you haven't counted the miles that you've done exactly, but do you know, because I know you unfortunately had to stop hiking in October 2020, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you at that point in the trail?
Oh, for the American Perimeter Trail, I was probably 9,000 miles in.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll hike another 2 or 3,000 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for this trek.
And,
Yeah.
and when are you hoping to start that again?
So I'm actually, you know, I meet with my doctor today. And yeah, I had the dentist this morning and now I have the doctor this afternoon.
Okay.
But I'm actually on a no training basis right now. So my doctor has ordered 0 training. I'm not allowed to do any physical activity. So I am working in accordance with him to find when we can resolve some medical issues that are going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I would put that at the end of April.
Okay.
Yeah, I would put that at the end of April. That's what we've discussed.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just going to take some time. But yeah, it's a real bummer for me right now because I mean, I hike, I backpack, I run, I bike, like I'm outside doing things, and I ski, and I'm being told for the time being just none of that. So hopefully it'll be a short period of time, but it will be enough to continue on and be striving this spring and this summer.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I suppose it cancels out the question then of you know, what have you been doing in the meantime, hike wise or exercise wise? I'm sure you haven't really been able to do much.
Yeah, yeah. When I returned to my home, I was very ill. I'm not as ill now. I was extremely ill at that point in time, but I continued to hike 10 to 15 miles a day, maybe, with weighted hiking, so like simulating a backpack.
Okay.
And so I just continued with that. But like I said, the recent orders I got from my doctor was just to cut it out. So I got in a couple hundred miles pretty quick. But so what would that be a week? I don't know, like maybe, yeah, closer to 100 miles a week or so of hiking.
Mhm.
But right now it's a zero. I mean, I cheated this morning. I did hike three miles this morning, but I'm telling on myself.
Let's hope your
So
doctor is not listening to this podcast.
yeah, no, I hope not. Yeah.
So what, apart from finishing the APT and working on that to create this I suppose ecological and conservational corridor around the country, what has the future hold for you? Do you have any more long hikes that you want to do, maybe in America or abroad?
Sure. So just know that I wear two hats during this process. And the one hat is the executive director of the American Perimeter Trail Conference. So, and I didn't answer your question quite earlier. So that's what I've been doing since I've been home,
Mm-hmm.
is training and working on the organization. So I wear that hat. And going forth with that hat, we're building the organization. We're going to be taking membership as soon as we get our new website up. So that's going to be life's work. So I'm just in that for decades now, working as part of that organization I formed. And then the other hat that I wear is as a professional backpacker. And what does that mean? It just basically means I make a living through my backpacking. People do that in different ways. But I would tell you, I'd say just check back in with me. I don't have anything in the books. Like, there's going to be a lot of work when I return back from the APT in August. And so that may determine what happens. Do I have my eye on stuff? Yes, like absolutely. Do I even want to be in the future on certain trails? Do I want to be a professional backpacker on that trail? Because it's different. It's a different experience. I've been both. I've been recreational and I've been professional, and yeah, there's a difference there because the recreational was always just money I'd saved up. You know, it was just money I saved up and my time. I work really hard during the off season, bank a bunch of money, and then go out during the season. And I did that for years. And now my responsibilities and the process here is a little bit different. So I would say check back in with me. I want to come hike with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Check out the Irish trails.
So I would just say, hey, to everyone there in Ireland, it's definitely on my list. Please share your beautiful land and country with me. I promise you I will share mine. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to see you guys over here, and look for me being over there in the next couple of years. I'd really enjoy that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, once we can travel, it's definitely on the books. I've been meaning to get back over to the States and do a long trail. I'm not too sure about doing the PCT just yet, or any of the Triple Crown trails, but certainly I will be over soon.
I would be so honored if you let me know when you're heading in that direction or making that decision. I don't think I'll give you any good advice, but you can ask me. So
where did you come from? My front door. What are you talking about? Speaking of advice, actually, so have you ever met anyone that has given you advice for this particular project that you're on? So anyone that's you said that people run across Texas all the time, or there's Ricky Gates, the famous ultra runner who ran across America, Transamericana, or there's plenty of people that done not this, but they've done similar feats. Have you spoken to anybody that has given you advice for this?
Yeah, the Buddha, the spiritual guides, um, the essence of nature
Mm-hmm.
and the universe. They help guide us in many ways, and they have certainly guided my journey over the years. And so relate. I heavily weigh on that. I don't have dogmatic ideas around that. I don't even have supernatural ideas around that, because to me, all of it is supernatural. When I look at this planet, to me, it all seems natural and very super. So, um, I don't know if I would say that during this time, like I have reached out to some other long distance backpackers. I don't know that I'm going to bring up like exact people, but maybe you might be able to guess like some people I've had a little bit of contact with
Mm-hmm.
as far as some coaching. Um, I will tell you that 20 years ago, I remember a backpacker telling me, don't leave your brain at home. And I was like, well, that's dumb advice, because like it's coming with me. And over time, I started to understand more of what they were talking about. And it was the piece in which you have everything you need, you already possess it, and rely on that in times that you may need it. So no matter what happens out there, um, you'll be all right. You'll be okay. But you have to be collected. You know, you have to make decisions. You may have to make decisions in very trying situations. So don't lose your brain. You know, have that approach to the backcountry, because often maybe there's more irrational behavior or something that the front country can absorb a little bit better, because you have a home or shelter or food or a support network. But just knowing that depending on where you decide to trek, that um, you have resources there, and you should trust them, and you should use your intuition in these situations. Another piece of advice I was told once was stay the trail. I still don't know exactly what that means, but I love saying it to people, like, just stay the trail, man, stay the trail. But I think what it means, what I have found, is if you want a lifestyle that is indicative of outdoor recreation or backpacking, then integrate that. Integrate that into your lifestyle. I live, when I'm not backpacking, I have a very simple existence. Um, and what do I mean by that is I don't have a lot of entanglements. So I have a beautiful community of people in which I live and rely on, and I'm so grateful for. But as far as like, I don't have material possessions, like I don't have a car, or um, I I don't I I typically don't have romantic relationships, um, because it's not the experience I want to have right now, really. And again, it allows me to go and hike something like the APT, and be present for that. So that's been great as far as the long distance. And my regular life is very physical. So I would recommend that. That's great preparation. How do I integrate that into my normal life? I just walk and bike a lot, like a lot, and I love it. But then it's also useful.
Mm-hmm.
There's utility to it because I use it to get around to places to where I need to get to, and it strengthens my body. It helps me emotionally and spiritually connect to the earth, and then it puts me in a much better place of preparation for a trail. I would, if you're asking for advice, I really think that you're going to have to go through your own process. And I will be here to help people with that. But there are things that I can tell you that you must learn on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, I'll give you a for instance, like one of those is over planning. I just find that it's much more valuable to be prepared. And my preparation was the Triple Crown. I was going up for the APT. I'm hiking the APT, and I had a lot of preparation in past long distance hikes. And then, like, physically, when I left to begin that trek in 2019, I was in the physical shape that I, was going to be conducive to, like, hopefully not getting many of the repetitive injuries that backpackers often get. So you can plan a Pacific Crest Trail hike to no end, and then 2 weeks in, it's a complete joke because you've thrown out your entire plan.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
just make sure you're prepared. Hike and backpack and enjoy and love your time outside, and it will do you. The payback will be tremendous
Mm-hmm.
in the fold that you receive from that preparation work, rather than that planning where you're spending your time reading other people's opinions all day.
Yeah.
Go find your own. And I'm not saying that's not a bad resource. Like, if I say something and I have an opinion, it might be useful for you. And maybe I did some of the legwork for you. Maybe I found out a hard lesson that I hope that you may not have to go through the whole piece of it, just part of it, because you have a different lesson that you need to learn that wasn't mine. So you can kind of skip that one, and you have another problem, something else that's going to help you with your personal growth and development. But really, the preparation piece and the planning piece too. Some people have fun with that, and then other people, it's just never ending. And just try to stay as present as possible before a big hike, because even now I find myself already back on the trail, even though I'm sitting here speaking to you now.
Mm-hmm.
My mind wants to go there.
Mm-hmm.
So, mm-hmm.
It's so true for a lot of people that go and do these longer distance hikes. Maybe not necessarily just the PCT or the long hikes in the US, but even here, a 100-mile trail or a 50-mile trail, even someone will go and just do the trail without any kind of experience whatsoever, not even a walk in a local forest, or setting up their tent in their back garden. They'll just go out, and just because they saw a documentary or they read a book or something like that. It's like, that's, yeah, okay, I know exactly what I need to do. You do need to do a little bit of preparing. You do need to do a little bit of your own research. But yeah, nothing's going to prepare you as much as being out there on the trail and just soaking it all up yourself.
Sir, yeah, the experiential piece of it.
Hmm.
And that's where you move from reading other people's opinions and their experiences to finding and making your own.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm not a gear snob. It's weird. I'm not even really a gearhead at all, I would say. Now, do I have gear sponsors? Yes, I do. But it's not a large focus of my process. And with that being said, it's very strange because when I through hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, well, when I've hiked a bunch of trails, I've just used homemade gear. So homemade sleeping bag, tent, clothes, stove, like, everything that you can possibly make to hike my trails, and I've enjoyed that process. And I've also enjoyed the process of learning about what new textiles are on the market and how people are doing things. It's all very fascinating to me, the progression and getting to watch it. And, where do we find balance? Are we so out of balance that we challenge ourselves to a point where we have a negative experience and maybe we decide we don't want to do that again. Many kids have a negative experience backpacking or something of the sort when they're a kid because they were with a leader who maybe wasn't prepared or knew how to manage the situation. And those kids never do that again. That's it.
You're
It's like, yeah.
you're talking to a father who dragged his daughter across a 100-mile trail in the UK, with who also himself did not have very much long distance hiking experience. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's okay. They have therapy. Usually people start going when they're about 40 or so. So she can hash this out then. But but the point is that finding a balance between having an experience that's not relevant, but just that is a progression in your growth, as opposed to one where you say, this sucks, I'm done, I'm no longer interested in growing in this way. So I think find out where that is for you. And there is something to be said with just jumping in to something. Okay. There's no problem with that, because you need to start somewhere.
Yeah.
You've got to start somewhere, and I don't know where that's going to be for you. I mean, jump in somewhere, try to do it safely, and just be aware of your own expectations. Your expectations are going to form that experience, and they can either sabotage your experience, or you can be completely delighted by them. So the choice is yours. And I would just say, if nothing else, you can, there's this great thing in fascination in romance with long trails. Like, for instance, what we have here with the Appalachian Trail, it's a national treasure. It's a gem, and it's a piece of our history. And so you'll have people that just are driving, and they happen to drive over the trail, and they stop and they get out of the car and they go and take pictures by the Appalachian Trail sign. And that may be the only experience that they have with that trail. And it's so fulfilling and delightful to these folks. And many of them, that may be their only experience, but they're still heavily involved with a trail organization or a conservation organization, because they see the value in it. And that is the way in which they appreciate and enjoy it and conserve it for others. So, yeah, I think that's great. Two of our board members, I don't have any children. Like, I've never been married or have kids. I'm not against it. I don't know that anyone wanted to have kids with me. I'm not certain. I just never found, it just didn't happen. Let's put it that way. It just didn't happen. And so, but two of our board members have little ones, and they go on all kinds of amazing adventures. And I'm always amazed at how much even young ones are able to do, really.
Yeah.
The flexibility and not necessarily maybe having the human or the adult expectations, the construct of how it has to be, how it should be, what it should be. They haven't figured the whole thing out yet.
Yeah.
And you get to, I think that would be such a joy to get to watch a little one, to get to see it through those eyes.
Yeah. Well, sometimes those eyes are sprinkled with tears because they're finding it quite difficult. But you're dead right. I spoke about this in an earlier episode of the podcast about that trail that I did with my daughter Caitlin. It took us 5 days, maybe a little bit more, maybe 6 days. But I was so impressed by how far she pushed herself. Despite all the tantrums and the complaining, but she still did it. One of the days she hiked, what would it be, maybe 17 miles in heat as well. It was a really hot summer in the UK at that point. And I was just blown away. We walked down to the local park on a normal day, and she'd be, well, when are we going home? And she hiked nearly 17 miles in one day. And I was blown away. But then she obviously did the rest of the trail as well. And it wasn't just that day. So kids can do a lot more than parents probably give them credit for. It's like what you said. It's when you're having that experience, and this goes for everybody, not just kids, but when you're in there having that experience, you realize how far you can push yourself. You realize that, oh, I have the tools to do this. I'm my only exit here. And if I keep going, I'll finish it. There's nothing really stopping me. My legs are working. My heart's beating. Everything's working. All I got to do is keep going forward. And I think kids, they probably complain about it, but they probably subconsciously know that themselves.
Yeah, I have full faith in this next generation, and I really appreciate you sharing that experience and also highlighting that your backcountry experience, the way that it is coming through your filter and through your senses, can be very different from someone standing right beside you in the same place.
Mm.
And so we are called to this place for all different reasons. I think for me, I would put a checkbox beside all of them. And they would be, because I don't think I'm very singular focused in that way, but because we have the romantic notion of the wilderness, which is more of, we find maybe in the writings of Henry David Thoreau or John Muir or something of that sort, and that kind of connection to the backcountry. We also have another experience where maybe the backcountry is an extremely dangerous place in which we find ourselves, especially during a winter storm or something of that sort. So the challenge that comes through that, the physical prowess that it takes, the emotional or the mental game that you play with yourself. These are all aspects, I think, that are equally valued. So, you know, I was living out there. So, I mean, did I come to every beautiful vista and go, oh my God, this is a beautiful vista, it changes my life? No, like sometimes I was like, oh, another stupid vista, who knows? Whatever it was. Maybe it was just, I really decided I'm going to push myself to do this mileage today, and I'm going to do it. Or I'm going to push myself to back off of the miles and go slower. But I can find a place in there that's challenging to my physical or emotional body that may not have to do specifically with the sensory, the sensations that I'm having directly in front of me. It may only be an athletic pursuit to you. I don't see a right and wrong in it. If you hiked a long trail and you had a epiphany, some kind of spiritual epiphany, that a message you received or a vision, and you want to translate that and share that with the world, I think that's absolutely wonderful that you were able to find that through that medium. But if you get on a trail and you say, I want to be the fastest person to ever do this trail, and I'm not really a nature person, I just want to do this, and I want to say that I completed the trail, I have no issue. I don't see a problem with your purpose. Mine is no greater than yours, but holistically, I think that it's pieces of all of this makes up the larger value that I have for these experiences, and certainly want to share them. And I want us to be kind to the land, because I do not see the difference between the people and the land. They are not in conflict. They never have been. The sustenance, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the land in which we find ourselves is not in conflict with us wanting to prosper as an industrial society. It doesn't have to be that way. There is another way. And so taking care of the land is taking care of the people.
Great. Well said. We are the universe experience itself. We are all stardust. I love it. This has been fantastic. I really, really enjoyed talking to you. Normally I ask some cheesy questions, and I hope you don't mind me asking. Well, I'll keep it. I'll keep it short. So you practically walked around the entire country. Um, so each state and each town and each county will have its own, what would you say, cuisine. Um, what has been your favorite meal on the APT so far?
Gosh, I'm going to try to go quick here because just know that I mail resupplied during the pandemic, so there weren't any meals besides the normal stuff I got every week,
Okay.
dry food. Okay, so just know that.
Hmm.
And then second, also know that the last 3 or 4 months of the trip, I was barely able to eat.
Okay. Right.
Sometimes only a couple hundred calories a day, maybe 200 or 300 calories a day because
Ooh.
I was very ill. So when I think of food, in that relationship, I'm like, oh, I hate it. I
Okay.
hate
Well
it.
done, Owen.
But
Well,
but
you brought the
I
mood right down.
I hate it. But I would say this: my favorite meal is often free, um, and is around good company. I once said to someone like, I don't even hardly go to restaurants half the time to for the food, just for the atmosphere and just spend time with my friends. And I thought there was daggers coming out of their eyes. They were a foodie, and it was kind of almost like, how dare you? But the best times on the APT has been meals where I've been invited into people's homes, and I didn't care what they were serving, but
Mhm.
the opportunity to break bread. Now, I will throw you a bone here, though, just for the conversation.
Please do.
I've eaten different diets. I was vegetarian for 15 years, and then I haven't been, and I have been, and different ways of living, and
Mhm.
and again learning through that process. But on this trip, I was not vegetarian, and I was in Texas, and Texas is known for its barbecue.
Oh yeah.
So you have these like huge barrels and barbecue pits outside. So even if there's a restaurant, it's not uncommon for them to be doing all of the cooking outside. So the restaurant's actually just a place to like sit and get a
Yeah.
drink or something. But the I was walking into this small town in Texas to resupply, and it happened to be my birthday, and I was turning 40 years old. And I walked past this barbecue place, which is famous all over the United States. I didn't know that at the time. And they said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm just walking over here." I didn't make a big deal about it. I just said, "I'm walking." They said, "Are you hungry?" I said, "Yeah." And I went in, and they gave me a t-shirt, and they gave me a ball cap, and everyone was like getting on the social media, and they fed me, and the barbecue was fantastic. Fantastic. They use a plant there called mesquite that they cook it and smoke it with. And so I don't want to hurt any of the trail angels out there that did invite me into their homes. Your meals by far were the best. But if there's one that was memorable, it was that one on my birthday. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Well, like even if you didn't mention the barbecue, it would have been a fantastic answer because that was beautiful. It was poetic. But now, God, I think I need to go to Texas. I need to find this barbecue place. I need to break my vegetarian diet. Look, it's been absolutely great. Thank you so much for all your time and your wisdom and your stories. I'm definitely going to catch up with you at some point in the near future to see how you're getting on with the APT. And as I said to you before we even started recording this, we're more than happy to help promote the project, the conference, and to see this project through. And hopefully one of these days get it onto you might see the APT on HiiKER.
Yeah. And anyone listening to this has just been a really great interview. This has been one of my favorite
Oh,
experiences, and I do a
cool.
lot of these. So if you're out there listening, definitely check out this podcast. This guy knows what he's doing. It's great. I
Oh,
would. So just you have my endorsement for sure, and I hope also that people will. This will whet your appetite to learn more about backpacking. And you can find me at any social media. And then also learn more about the American Perimeter Trail Conference. And there's a website, www.americanperimetertrailproject.com. www.weebly, weebly.com. And I don't know if you're going to post any of these links.
We will, yeah.
And there was an article that just came out about me this week in Backpacker Magazine. So wherever you guys buy that, check that out. I'm in there. And we look forward to building this trail. And I hope that you'll join me this summer. I also have a Patreon. So if you want to learn more about hiking and backpacking, I will be there to help you. So you can find me there. And if you just for entertainment's sake want to see me backpacking this summer through some pretty dangerous terrain, actually, find me there. I'll share stuff with you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, many touch points, but yeah, absolutely. We'll be posting all of the details, website, social media channels, all the information that people can catch up with you. But as I said, we will be keeping in touch, and we will be chatting again really soon. So best of luck with your recuperation and no hiking.
No hiking, just for a little while. Just for a little bit, maybe a couple days, maybe a couple weeks.
A couple of days. Just keep the feet up, watch Netflix or something, or look out the window. Just no hiking, and then get nice and strong so you can finish the APT. We'll talk to you very soon.
And make a trip to Ireland, because through our social media, we have people from other countries, but you probably know why, and we don't have to go into this now, but many of the people are from Ireland. Most people from a country outside of the United States that interact with us are from Ireland. So
maybe they're listening to us right now, and hopefully they are. Rue, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Great, thank you.
And there you have it, my interview with Rue McKenrick, the founder of the American Perimeter Trail Conference. I hope you enjoyed this episode. It's the first episode of season 2, and we have quite a few interviews to get through in this season. We'd love to hear what you think. If you can give this a rating wherever you're streaming it, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, Acast, wherever you're getting this, we'd love to hear from you. The APT, the American Perimeter Trail, is currently not on HiiKER, but we are in talks, and we are developing this to be on HiiKER very soon. So keep an eye out for that. So until the next time, thanks so much for listening. Be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and happy hiking.